That was the coolest haircut you could have back then. Yeah.
I was like, this
Yeah.
big.
Lots of hair. So Lemon looks like his dad. Is that for you your back turn? Are you, that's okay. I don't see. Just 3 hours. I'm going to sit here so you're not touching. It was 3 hours. And the traffic was fine. It was crazy.
Even weird weather this year, we had really strange
Yeah. I had to water all the gardens. I think you did mine, but that'll be the time you realize you didn't do it. I'm gonna I just did a new job.
Hi.
I know, sorry, my hands are warm.
Nice to see you.
Oh.
All right. We're still shy.
Would you hold it
She likes it. I'm not so sure she likes it.
as it were your own? It's a hammer down. The thoughts are broken. Perhaps they're better left unsolved. I don't know. Don't really care. Let there be songs to fill the air. Still water. When there is no ever talks, no flow, reach out your hand. You can cut the empty. If your cup is full, may it be again, let it be known. There is a mountain that was not made by hands of men. There is a road, no simple highway between the dawn and the dawn of night. And if you go, no one may follow. That path is for your steps alone. Still water. When there is no ever tossed, no wind to blow, you choose to leave must follow. But if you fall alone. If you should stand who's to guide you? If I knew the way, I would take you home. La da da da, la da
I want to welcome you here today, both here in the chapel and those who are also participating through the live streaming of our service. We are here to celebrate the life of Robert Grindrod, a beloved husband, father, grandfather, son, brother, colleague, neighbor, and friend. My name is Dorothea Schaub, and it's a privilege for me to be joining with Anne and Kelly, Lynn and John and their families for just a short time today as you journey along this path of remembrance. In the book of Ecclesiastes, the writer reminds us that there is a rhythm to life. There are some things we cannot control, such as birth and death. And it also points out that there will be mixed emotions as we face situations, almost like a seesaw. There may be weeping and laughing, mourning and dancing. I expect that since Bob received the diagnosis that he had an aggressive form of leukemia last January, you've been experiencing all of these emotions. Sadness, naturally, at losing someone so important in your life. But there's also a sense of gratitude just because Bob was in your life. He had an amazing influence on his family and friends, and we're going to learn more about the impact he's had on you. I'm reminded that sometimes memories leak out of my eyes and roll down my cheeks. So besides the smiles and laughter that you may experience as memories are shared today, this is also the time to let the tears flow. Now saying that, Bob didn't want this to be a day of sadness, rather a reflection of the joys in his life that he's experienced. Perhaps these words would be his thoughts. I'd like the memory of me to be a happy one. I'd like to leave an afterglow of smiles when life is done. I'd like to leave an echo whispering softly down the ways of happy times and laughing times and bright and sunny days. I'd like the tears of those who grieve to dry before the sun, of happy memories that I leave when life is done. So let us quiet our hearts and minds. Please join me in prayer. Gracious Spirit, creator of life, carrier of hope, make your presence known among us. Enable us to be brave in our remembering, honest in our sorrow, and open in love and compassion to each other. Help us to seek not so much answers to our questions, but rather the patience to mourn and grieve. Enable us to remember with joy the lives of those we have loved. Send us your peace. Help us to focus on that which enables us to keep going. Remind us that time will never erase the memories, and that for a moment we're not alone as we sit here together. We give thanks for the times we had with our beloved Bob, both the ups and the downs of living life, but most of all, we're grateful for love, which is stronger than death. Help us to bear our sorrow without bitterness, to look forward slowly, one day at a time, and to gain some comfort from those who can help us ease our pain. Be with us now as we encourage and support each other. Amen. Well, the month of July is going to be remembered by the Grindrod family as a month of celebrations, some happy and some sad. For example, Bob was born on July 24th, and he passed away on July 22nd, just 2 days short of his 72nd birthday. He and Anne celebrated their wedding anniversary on July 25th, and I know that there's other family birthdays in this month that the family also celebrate. As earlier mentioned, Bob passed away on Monday, July 22nd. He was welcomed home by his father, Jack, who passed away 8 months ago. Now, I'm sure that when Bob crossed over the Rainbow Bridge, his beloved Labrador dog, Chelsea, was also waiting for him to share some chocolate cupcakes. Bob is remembered by Anne, his loving wife of 46 years, his 98-year-old mother, Ruth, brother Rick and wife Mara, and sister Lisa. He was a proud father to Kelly and husband David of Waterloo, Lynn and husband John Deong of Calgary, and John and Aya of Kobe, Japan. And he was very devoted to his 5 grandchildren, Oren and Bryn, Rowan, Alia, and Kalia. There's going to be a number of tributes to Bob today, and one is a rotating photo video that's playing through the service. I know the photos will certainly generate many memories. I now want to invite daughter Kelly to share her tribute to her father.
It's so lovely to see you guys here. For me, one of the great comforts when my dad, as he got older, was how many friends he had. Friends and aging, I think, is probably one of the greatest gifts that we've got. And for me, seeing you all here, and I know there's people on the live stream, it was just such a nice testament to who my dad was. So thank you all. So I just want to start by acknowledging that, if you know Dad didn't really want to leave, right? He kind of wasn't done. He wasn't done living yet. But he wasn't afraid, and he was at peace. He just loved life, right? He really lived his life. His own dad, as was mentioned, my grandpa Jack, had just died in November at age 95. His mom is still alive, my grandma Ruth. And Dad kind of thought that he would make it to his 95s as well. So he was pretty stunned in January, as we had just written my grandfather's eulogy, or obituary, and we talked about how life has many chapters, and my grandpa had showed us that you can just keep new hobbies, new friends, new trips, new travels, new experiences as you get older. And Dad was really excited. So when he was diagnosed and he kind of realized, well, this was his last chapter, he had a lot of grief for what he was losing. I think one of the things, though, that was most interesting that we really saw in the last several months is he was a very strong, remarkably stoic person. And that's a lot of what we saw. I mean, my sister and I and my brother, even when we were in hospital, they'd say, how do you feel? I feel great. He doesn't feel great. Do you have pain? I have no pain. He absolutely has pain, right? Like he was really always kind of trying to be positive, but maybe he really didn't have pain, but it was his way. And I think you see that in a lot of these photos. He was such an adventurer, right? Like he was skiing, he was doing exciting things. He was always going from one event to the next. And I think when we think about chapters and the things that we do, for you who are here, if there's that trip you're thinking of taking, take it. If there's that fun thing you're thinking of learning, learn it. If there's that great thing you're thinking of doing, do it. And I think that's what Dad really showed us, that it's really important to squeeze out every drop of life. Now, as many of you know, Dad grew up in the Rockies, lots of folks here from the mountains as well. He loved the outdoors. He was an avid skier in his teens. He loved to fish and camp and hike. He lived for golf. When he got his PICC line in for chemo, one of the things is he couldn't golf. He's like, I can't golf with this? This idea he'd go through chemo and he was going to be very sick, but he couldn't golf. He loved to golf. He loved to be outdoors. So throughout his life, he had ups and downs, I think, like many of you, and he took a lot of pride in his ability to weather the hard stuff with grit and hard work. His most used phrase for my siblings and I when we were growing up, like we're talking every day, was, well, life sucks and then you die. Which sounds terrible. But Dad kind of, as my brother pointed out, Dad kind of shrugged off the hard stuff, right? The hard stuff happens. We go through hard stuff. You just get on with it. His second favorite phrase, which is maybe my favorite, dripping in sarcasm, was that this is the world's tiniest violin playing a sad song just for you, which also should tell you a lot. But hidden behind this unsympathetic hard shell was someone who was actually very thoughtful and curious about the world around him. I kind of joke that he was immensely supportive. He was curious. He was actually very liberal, which is kind of funny because if he was here, he'd be horrified that I call him liberal in any capacity. But he actually had a very open-minded view of the world. He was always challenging his beliefs. He was always trying to learn new perspectives, very widely read, watched all sorts of different shows, and I really hope I take that from him. In recent conversations with my brother, Dad remembered how much he loved my mom when they first met, how beautiful she was on the day they eloped. In his last week, he was proudly telling the care team that they had been married. They'd been together 49 years, married 46, 2 days short of their 47th anniversary. And of all the couples who got married in that summer of 1978, they were the only ones who lasted. And he took a lot of pride in that. I came along in 1980, and the twins in 1984. My earliest memories were being shoved down toboggan hills, camping, riding bikes. He used to sell his woodworking at craft sales in the mall to make extra money. He was really creative in these ways. He was also the guy who would buy the boat and then force us to water ski in the lake filled with sharks in our mind, but we had to do it. He was the guy who would wake us up in the middle of the night in the dead of winter to look at northern lights. So when we had those northern lights show recently, all these people I knew in Ontario, where I live, had never seen them. And I thought, well, God, I've seen them so many times, right? Dark Alberta nights, because my dad had gotten me up. Life on the oil patch meant that Dad worked away for long stretches in difficult conditions. And I knew when he left, he'd be gone a long time. My mom was often responsible for the day-to-day of raising 3 young kids alongside a full-time job. But I also have vivid memories of the smell of his boots when he'd come back from the rig, or watching Star Trek and MASH together after dinner. I knew he loved the chemistry of the mud. We had drill bits and photos of rigs all over the house. It wasn't until I was older that I realized the places he worked. He's got this panoramic in the basement of a rig in the desert of Oman, for example. He worked in Russia. He worked in the Arctic Circle. He had to take kidnapping training to go to Venezuela. He had to figure out how to get out of a submerged helicopter to go to offshore oil rigs. When you think about this stuff, I'm a boring professor who sits in an office all the time. My dad had to escape helicopters to go, to these places. And that's kind of what he was like. He always had these adventures in his pocket, right? These places he wanted to go. Eventually, he got jobs closer to home, safer jobs, and was more involved in our daily lives, which made him much happier, but also brought to light how much he'd missed in those years working away. So I think that's why his last chapter was actually probably his happiest one. He decided he was going to get a do-over with his grandkids, and boy, did he meet the challenge. He was hands-on during the early years with all 5 kids, and as they got older, he wanted to know all of their interests and hobbies. He taught Rowan to swim at the pool in Airdrie, yes. Still working on putting his nose in the water, but he's getting there. We've got Alia and Kalea, who he talked to every single day on Skype, and there was an ocean between them. They live in Japan. Every day he talked to them in Japan, making them laugh. They made Grandpa laugh. And the thing is, if you got to see the little kids when they were with Grandpa, if they were ever around him, someone was always on his lap. And you see that a lot in the photos too. There's always a kid on Grandpa's lap. Now, my own girls are swimmers. And an interesting thing is, like, I've been to so many swim races, and Dad's the one I would send videos of swim races to. So he watched hundreds of swim races, like so many. You have to imagine that these girls are in a 10-lane pool, and they'll swim a relay. The Olympics are on right now. You'll have 10 teams, 4 girls each, identical racing suits, caps, goggles. I would just send him a video, and he'd send back, oh, that second leg that Bryn did was great, or oh, Oren's kick is really coming along. He could look at the video without any prompting and pick them out just from their swim style. My own husband needs a paragraph on what he's seeing, what lane, what race, what we care about. Dad needed nothing. So he was so invested in what these guys were doing. In the last couple of months, as he got sicker, we were keenly aware that he was leaving us. So Lynn and John and I would talk about what we'd missed the most. His stutter, obviously. His loping walk. His crazy eyebrows for my girls. That's the big thing. How big could his eyebrows get? And this is my favorite, how he'd explain facts to me against my will. And you just had to sit through it. But I learned a lot from him. Everything really becomes a memory to hold. So over the last few months, Dad had been texting Oren his favorite songs. So you can hear it, when you heard Ripple. That was one he had sent to Oren. One day he sent her a 17-minute video for Inagata Davida. And she's a teenager. And she said, are you insane? I'm never watching a video for 17 minutes. And he said, well, I used to do this all the time. I'd sit with my friends and listen to a whole album. And she said, were you high? And he said, probably. But she did. And the thing that's interesting is you can actually ask the girls now. They know his favorite song. They know his favorite line from his favorite song. They have his iPods with his music on it. So he knew he was going, but then started leaving this map to who he is for them, so when he couldn't be around. So again, if you have young people in your life, I'd hope you'd think of doing the same. So I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about how my dad's last chapters included supporting my mom. So my mom, Anne, has lived with Parkinson's for 17 years. Both of my parents showed enormous resilience in living a life with a progressive neurologic disease. Experience has taught us, or at least taught me, that a diagnosis of Parkinson's for one family member is a diagnosis experienced by the whole family. Dad was protective and supportive, sometimes frustrated, and sometimes not always nice, and sometimes wonderful, and sometimes incredibly kind. But he really had helped Mom hold on to her independence a lot longer than I think she necessarily would have been able to on her own. So as we go forward, I know some of you have lost your partners, your widows or widowers. Mom lost her partner, but she also lost her support and independence. So I'd encourage you, if you think of Dad, pop by and say hi to Mom, give her a call. I think that, more than anything, is probably what Dad would want the most. So in the weeks, I want to end by sharing this poem from the nature-loving Mary Oliver. Now, it's a bit cliche. I even checked with a friend who's a poetry professor. I said, is it cliche if I... She said, no, this is the best poet for talking about loss. Mary Oliver is a Pulitzer Prize-winning poet. She loved nature, and she's famous for her solitary walks in nature, which is just very similar. Dad loved nature. But she's also very good at putting to words what we feel with grief. So this is her poem, When Death Comes. When death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps that purse shut. When death comes like the measles pox. When death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades. I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what's it going to be like, this cottage of darkness? And therefore, I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I look upon time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular. And each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending as all music does towards silence. and each body a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I've made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. So after a life lived, Dad, you did not simply visit this world. You were singular, a lion of courage, precious to the earth, and married to amazement, and I will miss you greatly. Thank you.
Kelly, thank you so much for sharing those words and memories with us. Now, there's another tribute that we've got. It's from Bob's brother, Rick, and John is going to share that with us now.
All right, good morning, everyone. So Rick couldn't make it today because he had a surgery, I think, last week. So I'll be reading this speech that he wrote. So he starts with, "Good morning, everyone. And it's hard to know where to start or how to describe Bob to you as a brother. Honest, strong, forgiving, supportive, generous. All traits that I'm sure everyone who knew him may have experienced at one time or another. So Bob and I shared many adventures and secrets over our early years, but we always seemed to know when to tease one another to cause the other the most embarrassment. And in our early days, Bob was the older, wiser, and generous brother. He had the good timing to pass along the perfect toy when he thought I needed cheering up. Bob also invited me on numerous adventures with friends. I'm sure there were several rolling eyes when the little brother was allowed to come along. But that led to Bob and I doing numerous firsts together. His first days on skis, first brother team to sell newspapers in the Jasper campgrounds, first time canoeing with without adult supervision, and so many more. And over the early years, Bob and I shared numerous adventures and challenges together. If we were competitive at anything, it was fishing. Who could catch the first fish, the most, or the biggest? And one year in Jasper, Bob caught a 7-pound rainbow trout in Lake Edith, and I'm still chasing that prize. After we moved to Jasper, we started skiing together. In 1966, we started at the small hill in Jasper named Whistler Mountain, complete with a rope tow and a Poma chairlift. My big brother would always blaze the way, and then he'd come back and he'd get me to try new runs or jumps. And we eventually graduated to Marmot Basin, where the tradition continued. Bob would explore and then take me to new terrain or to a new jump. I remember one day in particular when Bob had found a new jump that was better than any jump we had tried before. We got off the T-bar, skied down to the hidden spot, and stopped above the newly piled snow. And as my big brother always did, he said, "I've done this already. You watch and follow." And my response, "Sure, whatever you say." Now Bob lined up the distance, pointed out the good line, and took off. I'm sure he was lined up exactly where he wanted to be, but he's going a little faster than he planned. And that wasn't a problem for my big brother. He hit that jump, and he sailed, and right past the landing zone and into the unpacked snow. And when he landed, he simply disappeared. So it was kind of funny, because he just wasn't there anymore. I saw a toque, goggles, a pole eventually, then some skis, and he finally slid out the bottom, and he stopped. And I was naturally worried, and I was already rehearsing what I was going to tell Mom and Dad, but how bad could it be? So I skied down with the other witnesses to find Bob frowning and digging snow out of his ears. And the best part of the wreck was when the Marmot hotshot, a 5-year-old kid who was a Marmot Basin terror, skied up, sprayed Bob with snow, and said, "Hey, mister, can you do that again? My friend missed it." So Bob tried to jump up and chase his tormentor, but he slipped and he face planted back in the powder. Now, once we found all of Bob's clothes and equipment, he made me swear to secrecy, and Mom and Dad never heard the story. Another first for Bob and I occurred when he was working on one of his passions, golf. And again, I was new to golf, but Bob had convinced me to get some clubs, buy good shoes, and come and learn. We golfed several times over a few weeks, but this particular night, there was Bob, a golf buddy, and myself. And on the first tee, we were approached by an older gentleman and his son. The son was the golfer, and his dad was the caddy. It didn't take long for us to realize the golfer was very special. So he was blind. His dad would tell him the distance, the type of hole, whether it was a dog leg to the right or uphill. And he would then line up the club and the ball, and sure enough, the golfer would hit it true. His short game, his putting, sand traps were all the same. He soundly beat us all. And I learned that night that Bob had another virtue, humility. At the 19th hole, we had a long talk. Bob expressed the desire to be that confident in his life, to try new things without worry of failure or embarrassment. And I can say that he followed this throughout his adult life, whether it was cycling, running, woodworking, or working on the Strata Council. I'm sure there are countless other examples. And Bob was never afraid to try new things and do them to the best of his ability and only look back when there needed to be a teaching moment. And a few weeks ago, Bob asked me what I remembered as my first memory. The answer took a minute or two, but it flashed back as clear as the day it happened. It was me sitting with my big brother in the window. It was me sitting with my big brother in the window of our house in Edmonton on a cold night in 1958, watching the snowfall and backgrounded by the Trudeau dry cleaner and neon sign. I was with my brother and in a very happy place in our home. Throughout my life, I've been lucky to have such a special friend. When I first heard about the diagnosis, I was struck by how strong and positive Bob remained, even though the news wasn't good. To put it simply, that was Bob. He always had a quiet confidence about him, gave opinions in measured amounts, and didn't seem to ever panic. During this journey, I was able to spend several valuable days with Bob and watched him win over the medical staff with his positive outlook and impress others around him with that stoic resolve. Rest now, my brother. You have earned it. And thank you for a lifetime of memories.
Thank you, John and Rick, for bringing forth those memories as well with us. Well, Bob's influence has been highlighted through your tributes, and it's also being felt through the music that was selected here today. Granddaughter Oren suggested the opening song, Ripple, by the Grateful Dead, and it's so appropriate. Some of the lyrics say, "Would you hear my voice come through the music? Would you hold it near as if it were your own? And later, let there be songs to fill the air." Music was one of the ways that Bob connected with people, with his family on those road trips, with his grandkids, especially Orrin, who was learning to play the guitar with his coaching. Being connected to people was important to Bob. He remembered people's names and he could speak with anyone. Not only did he cherish his family times, like shopping trips and fishing at Arbor Lake with the grandkids, but he loved his weekly 3 golf games with his buddies, and in the winter, the Market Mall walks. He enjoyed his neighbors and offered his knowledge to revamping the bylaws for his homeowners association. Some of you may remember Bob when he wore a mustache. I see it in some of the pictures here, and I was told that that was about up until about 10 years ago. And then last month, he made the decision to let his handsome beard grow again. And there was a habit that the family are going to recall as time goes by. A nightly routine of eating a peanut butter and jam sandwich with a glass of milk before heading to bed. I don't know if you're like me, been tuning into the Olympic Games this past week. I certainly admire the sacrifices and dedication training that the athletes and their families have undergone, developing their level of skill in their sports as they seek the medal podium. And I think life is like that. It prepares and trains us for dying. Bob certainly filled his life with adventure, skiing out of helicopters, biking the highway between Jasper and Banff, working everywhere from Russia to Venezuela to Oman and the Arctic Circle. But he also took time to read. Bob was immensely curious about the world, ever ready to start a conversation and always with a book or two at hand. The hardest part of knowing that death is imminent is a heartbreak in knowing that you won't see your children or grandchildren grow up, start their careers, and have families of their own. But during the time that remained for Bob, the family gathered on special occasions to celebrate life. So you see, Bob had learned that money can buy a bed but not sleep, a clock but not time, a book but not knowledge, a position but not respect, medicine but not health, amusement but not happiness, acquaintance but not friendship, obedience but not faithfulness, a house but not a home. You see, sometimes we get so wrapped up in our busyness that we forget to enjoy the daily joys of life. Barely the day has started, and it's already 6 p.m. Barely arrived on Monday, and it's already Friday. And the month is already over. And the year is almost over. And already 40, 50, 60 years have passed. And we realize that we've lost our parents and friends. And we realize it's too late to go back. So let's try, despite everything, to enjoy the remaining time. Let's keep looking for activities that we like. Let's put some color in our gray. Let's smile at the little things that put peace in our hearts. And despite everything, we must continue to enjoy with serenity the time that we have left. Let's try to eliminate the afters. You know, I'll do it after. I'll say it after. I'll think about it after. We leave everything for later, as if after is ours. But what we don't understand is that afterwards, the coffee gets cold. Afterwards, priorities change. Afterwards, the charm is broken. Afterwards, health passes. Afterwards, the kids grow up. Afterwards, parents get old. Afterwards, promises are forgotten. And afterwards, the day becomes the night. Afterwards, life ends. And then it's often too late. So let's leave nothing for later, because we can lose the best moments, the best experiences, the best friends, the best family. Bob knew that, and that's his legacy: to live each moment, cherish one another, and let songs fill the air. Pardon me. I want to express my appreciation to Anne and family for the opportunity of joining with you today in remembering Bob. Thank you for providing us with these wonderful memories that you have shared with us. And thank you for letting us have an opportunity to say goodbye, Bob. I know the family would want me to express their appreciation to you here in the chapel and those on live stream for watching and joining us in the service, for your support not only today, but in the past months. Your many acts of kindness have lifted them up. The family also expresses their appreciation to all of the caregivers who have supported Bob and Anne over these past 7 months. This gift of time that the family were able to spend with Bob has been treasured by them. And thank you to his friends and neighbors who offered Bob and Anne so much support these last months. I also want to thank Sandra and Chase and the videographer here today and all the professional staff at Evan J. Strong Funeral Service for taking such good care of the family over the past week. Following the service, the family invites you to stay and join them for a time of fellowship and refreshments here at the funeral home. And this is going to be a time for you to share your memories with them, and I know that the family are going to treasure those stories as well. At the end of life, what really matters is not what we bought, but what we built. Not what we got, but what we shared. Not our competence, but our character. Not our success, but our significance. Live a life that matters. Live a life of love. And that's just what Bob did. Bob, your family and friends are grateful for having had the experience of knowing you. They're grateful for having you here with them on this journey that we call life. They are grateful for the memories that you have embedded in their hearts, the experiences that you have shared with them that has shaped them as people, and the love that you bestowed upon all of them. We are grateful that your pain and illness have ended and that you will never suffer again. And may you carry with you the love of these people who have gathered here today to say farewell. It's time to rest now, Bob. Your work here is done. We bid you so much love on this next phase of your journey. Nothing but absolute peace is yours. Know that you are loved and that you will never be forgotten. Bob knew that tomorrow is not promised to any of us. He lived his life to its fullest. He did good. He did what is right, and he loved those who were close to him. You're going to remember Bob for how he made you feel. He would want you to remind your loved ones just how much they mean to you and share life's moments and experiences, as these are things that others will remember about you. So Bob, into the freedom of wind and sunshine, we let you go. Into the dance of the stars and the planets, we let you go. Into the wind's breath and the hands of the star maker, we let you go. Bob, we love you, we miss you, we want you to be happy. Go safely, go dancing, go running home. I want to leave this blessing with you. It's by Chief Dan George. May the stars carry your sadness away. May the flowers fill your heart with beauty. May hope forever wipe away your tears. And above all, may silence make you strong. So go in peace and love for one another. We're going to close our service with Bruce Springsteen's song, Waitin' on Sunny Day.